podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network. Sports Social, now on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hi, it's Lindsay Hooper here. Every week, join myself and Natasha Dowie for The Offside Rule covers the whole of the women's football pyramid and takes a look abroad as well. We have 3 key matches that we analyse from every weekend. Join myself and Natasha Dowie every single week to hear about the women's football pyramid, the ingoings, outgoings and ongoings on The Offside Rule podcast.
Hello and welcome to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast with me, Rich Ferraro. Welcome to what is a combined show this week. It is a match report on Wednesday night's victory on penalties over Bristol City in the FA Cup. And it is also the return of our Friday Five. And with that, let's get straight over to the 1865 news desk and we will hear from our very own news hound, Jamie Martin.
Hi, this is Jamie Martin with your top 5 Forest stories from the 1865 news desk. Now the headline of this week's news, Joe Worrall has left Nottingham Forest on loan. The Forest club captain, Joe Worrall, who has been at the club since infancy, has left the club on loan to join Turkish Super League club Besiktas. Worrall, who has been club captain for the last 2 years, captained his club to championship success with the Reds reaching the Premier League for the first time in 23 years. Despite the success, Worrall eventually fell down the pecking order, seeing limited minutes before an alleged fallout with then head coach Steve Cooper saw him banished from the first team training exercises alongside his colleague Scott McKenna, now also departed. Worrall would have had chances under Nuno, but they were limited and not enough to impress. The English defender joins the Eagles on a loan deal until the end of June, with a buy option in place worth roughly £3.5 million. Wishing Joe all the best in his move and thank him for his ultimate contribution. Now, loan news. This week, Nottingham Forest are going to review Divock Origi's loan spell after injury woes. AC Milan striker on loan at Nottingham Forest, Divock Origi is set to have his loan reviewed further after significant injury issues in the Forest squad. Since signing for Forest, Origi is another name that has been seen limited action and during the spells where he did play failed to impress. Arriving with anticipation, Origi has so far failed to live up to expectations, but with Forest lacking in the forward department with availability issues present, any thoughts of Origi's loan being terminated have been put on hold for the time being. Forest are likely to keep hold of the Belgian forward till at least the end of his loan, despite MLS interest. Previous reports suggested the loan would be cut short after a poor career so far at the City ground. Now, the third piece of news in this week's newsreel, Chris Wood is set to miss 6 to 8 weeks of action with a hamstring issue. Despite Nuno's initial verdict that Wood would be out for some time, but not a long time, the Portuguese head coach later confirmed the forward would be absent for around 6 to 8 weeks, meaning return would be nearer late March/April time. Nottingham Forest top scorer this season with 8 goals in the Premier League. Having Wood absent is certainly not a positive, but with Taiwo Awoniyi now back and fit, Forest fans are hoping that their Nigerian star can pick up where he left off and stay fit after his successful groin surgery and recovery around the new year. Wood suffered the hamstring issue after the club's fixture against Arsenal last week and will now undergo rehabilitation with club medical staff. FA Cup news then. Forest are into the next round of the FA Cup after beating Bristol City. A cold Wednesday night in Trentside saw the Reds Nottingham Forest come out victorious over Liam Manning's well-oiled Bristol City side in a game that was not always easy on the eyes but was ended by a penalty shootout. Forest opened the scoring earlier on after a cross found the head of Felipe, who somersaults in excitement as he marks his return back to the first team in style. However, Forest wouldn't hold the lead for long as former Derby man Jason Knight levels the scoring. The two sides exchanged shots, close encounters, but nothing came of them, even in extra time. A penalty shootout was the decider and Forest won it after Taiwo Awoniyi's final penalty. The Reds are unbeaten in penalty shootouts since the 90s, and if it's anything to go by, probably have one of the best records in the league for it. Forest will now take on Manchester United in the next round of the FA Cup on February 28th. And lastly then, for this week's news, injury returns for Nottingham Forest. After a series of unfortunate injuries, Forest has seen the return of some of their stars in a time where they are perhaps needed most. Anthony Elanga returned recently from a thigh issue, getting significant minutes against Bristol City. Also, Taiwo Awoniyi, who returned against Arsenal, also got minutes against the away side in the FA Cup. And Felipe, of course, also returns after issues with a muscle injury and started in the recent home win. Divock Origi also played the most minutes since arriving at the club against Bristol City as he returned from an injury. Moussa Niakhaté and Cheikhou Kouyaté also returned from AFCON after Senegal's loss to Ivory Coast last week, with the pair featuring in the FA Cup as starters on Wednesday night. And Ola Aina is still out at AFCON alongside Ibrahim Sangare and Willy Bolly. So still 3 players at AFCON, but they'll be playing in the final of AFCON very soon. So returns expected in later in the month. Lots of returns though, only downside being Chris Wood, who remains out for a further 5 to 6 weeks with a hamstring issue. So that's the latest from the 1865 news desk. I'm Jamie Martin. Be sure to catch up with me on social media via @I'mJamieMartin on Twitter. Updates on Nottingham Forest related news throughout the week. Take care and we'll see you soon.
Thank you very much, Jamie. And I've got Tom and Baz here with me, and we're going to start off with something that Jamie, well, basically, as soon as he sent us his news bulletin, we had the breaking news of Forest's 25-man squad being announced, and there's a couple of surprises in there. So just quickly to run through it, there's 5 goalkeepers, including the 3 who've been signed this season, Hennessy and George Shelvey. We've got a Wonyi Wood and Origi up front, and then in defence, we've got the return of Richie Larea, and in midfield, we've got Atif Konate being mentioned there. So, Baz, just to start with you, there's a few surprises in there, aren't there?
Yeah, the 5 goalkeepers makes me think he's just hedging his bets a bit there, because I don't know about the new one, but Shelby's still very young, but yeah, the other 3 haven't really impressed, have they? So maybe he's just hoping for the best there.
And Tom, you before we started recording, you were just saying you'd forgotten how to pronounce Richie Larea's name. That's how long it's been since he's been involved. So do you think that the fact that he's included, maybe Hennessy being included, with the reduction of squad size, with the likes of McKenna and Worrall leaving, quite a lot of other departures of players lower down the pecking order, do you think it's just a possibility that Nuno's kind of packing out the squad and kind of making sure that he's naming 25 players, even if some of them are definitely not going to play?
Yeah, pretty much. I think this is just like a whistle-stop tour, isn't it, for Larea? I can see him being loaned out again when the MLS season starts, or when they can start signing players again. So it's just been one of those signings, hasn't it, where we brought him in thinking Spence was going to go back to Middlesbrough a few years back, and he stayed and then got promoted, and the club's basically gone to the Premier League, and probably the step up probably a bit too much for him. I know we haven't seen much of him, but yeah, it's just one of those. Then with the others, I think there's not really many surprises in there. Probably Konate, in a way, I would have thought he would have gone on loan by now, but everybody else just picks themselves pretty much, don't they? So then with obviously Worrall and McKenna gone, it's just a matter of filling in those voids left by them pair.
And Baz, coming back to you, I mean, the squad looks a bit imbalanced on paper because we've only got Felipe Niakhaté and Bolly as centre halves. We've only got 3 forwards, but of course, at the back, Murillo and Omar Bamadeli are under 21, so they don't have to be listed. Up front, Ribeiro and Alanga and Gio Reyna, they are under 21, so they don't have to be listed. So that kind of explains why some of the more surprising names are in the official squad, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I'm kind of hoping Konate does get to play, because I saw him years and years ago. He's been hanging around, sort of like about to make his breakthrough for such a long time. So I quite fancy seeing him.
Mm-hmm. And just last thing on the squad. I mean, as Tom alluded to there, I wouldn't be surprised to see some of those players move on before they even get a chance. I mean, we know that as Jamie mentioned, the MLS window is going to be open, and we can see Larea and maybe Origi moving on, depending upon the fitness issues of others. So Baz, I mean, Nuno said he wanted to reduce his squad, so this is the ultimate illustration of the fact that that's happened. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I mean, if you look at I've just got the list of the contracted players under 21, and I mean, that's a huge list, but yeah, not many of them are going to make it into the first team. So when you've got a squad of 25 plus only a handful of others that are under 21 that are going to make it there. It kind of looks a bit thin, but I guess that's the way it goes.
And, I mean, we could add in there, I suppose, that, for example, the likes of Bamadelli and Murillo have played a lot more games than we perhaps expected at the time that they were named as the squad, brought into the squad.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, let's move on to the other most recent news, which was that Forest have got through to the fifth round of the FA Cup, where they'll play Manchester United. Tom, it was not a classic, was it?
No, it wasn't. It was pretty awful, and you can see why the TV companies thought better of having us on the box last night, because obviously you had the Chelsea Villa game on, then Leeds Plymouth from Tuesday, which was on BBC. But no, it wasn't that great of a game. I thought when we scored first, I thought it was like keep the ball a lot better and hopefully get a second and possibly a third. And that's not being disrespectful to Bristol, but we'll like let Bristol back into the game. And looking where they are in the league, I think they should be striving for like playoffs. Really, I think they've got a decent up and coming manager, because he had a decent time at Oxford, and they've got some like decent players there. They're just they're probably a striker missing from being like knocking on the door of the playoffs. So, but yeah, going back to our perspective, it wasn't a great game, and I think everybody around us knew it was going to end on a penalty shootout last night.
And just staying with you, Tom. I mean, I was working last night, so I've only seen the highlights that are presented on the website. But I kind of felt that Bristol City were a little bit unlucky. They had a lot more high quality shots. Turner had to make some saves. There's a question mark. I'm surprised that VAR didn't have something to say about Origi's goal, because it definitely looked at first glance to me like it had come off his hand. So yeah, were Forest a bit lucky?
I think on the balance of play, I think a draw was the right result if it was a league game, and then obviously you had the extra time when, if pushed towards an answer, I think Bristol just edged it in the in extra time. I think they had a couple of the better openings, and there was a couple of chances where one just I can't remember who it was now, he stretched and that went wide, and there was a shot what went over Turner's goal and everything. So in extra time they looked the better side. Then we picked up the ball and a couple of like quick passes, and we was in the attacking sense. But our finishing wasn't there last night. I mean, there was a chance where Awani was kind of through, then he's checked back, and then the defenders got in and obviously stopped him from scoring. So it wasn't a great watch last night. And
I mean, certainly there was the chance that I don't know which Bristol player it was, to be honest, but in the second half of extra time, where the ball went through, the cross was on the line, and the Forest player, I think is Omar Bamadelli, might have been back with the Bristol City players. To all ends, even knowing the score, I was expecting it to go in. Watching the highlights.
Yeah, it's a bit like that Castle one, wasn't it? Year '96, when you look back and thinking that's going to go in, and obviously you know the answer. And it was a bit like it last night. You've seen watched the match and then the highlights or whatever, and you still think it's going in. You just don't know how it. It was harder to miss than to score, but somehow they missed it. But thankfully we hung on and went to extra time. And then we won on penalties. But I just think it wasn't a great game to watch. It was a bit of a ball fest, to be honest. And I mean, when you've got a game which is 90 minutes plus an extra half an hour for extra time on the penalties, and you only have like 3 minutes on the BBC website of highlights, it just tells you everything, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, that's one way of looking at it. Let's just talk about some of the players who got some minutes. So Jamie did mention it there. So we had Felipe playing the full 120. Origi started and got plenty of minutes under his belt. Taiwo got some more minutes. Anthony Elanga got some more minutes. Who else? Kouyaté and Niakate made their comebacks after AFCON. So if nothing else, as a kind of fitness exercise, that'll have been good for the squad, won't it, Tom?
It would. And I think with Awani, I was kind of surprised because obviously with Wood out, you've got to basically wrap him in cotton wool because God forbid Awani picks up a long-term injury. We're technically screwed because you can't. Origi hasn't really pulled up many trees, has he, since he's joined on loan? I know he scored last night, but he's been in and out of the side for injuries or whatever. And then we brought the kid from Sporting, haven't we, Ribeiro, and you can't really put it all on his shoulders. So, yeah, I think we've got to be very, very careful with Awani. It's nice to see Elanga. Elanga started really well, actually. He was trying to get down there, our left, there, right, and he is getting back. I mean, the last couple of games is probably just like that bit of match sharpness, but yeah, I think that will put him in good stead for the weekends. And he's another player that, because of how he is, you've got to wrap him in cotton wool. And even Hudson-Odoi, I mean, he's that sick. It was a horrible challenge from Billing, and I was very surprised to see him in the squad last night because he's had problems with his Achilles, and he put it on Instagram, didn't he? When players do that and you're thinking they're out, then put some kind of Instagram, they're usually an indicator that they're going to be in the squad. And yeah, it was pleasant to see him in the side because obviously I just feared the worst when he hobbled off, and I thought, oh, here we go. He's got that goal, and he's probably needed that goal just to kickstart him again. But yeah, it's until we get Sangari back, I think the squad picks itself at the moment because we're down to the bare bones and players are running on the fumes, aren't they?
Yeah, and Baz, I was going to come to that. So obviously, with the players who are missing, plus Yates and Dominguez being suspended for the cup, Nuno was forced into seeing what Forest looked like playing with three at the back, and it also saw Morgan Gibbs-White playing 120 minutes, but he looked like he was crocked in extra time with a run of Premier League matches coming up, and Gibbs-White being given the captain's armband when Yates isn't playing. It seems as though, we're going to be hoping that he's okay, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, the only bright spot is that potentially Gio Reyna likes playing as a number 10, so that gives us a bit of cover for Morgan if he could fit in and hit the ground running, as it were. But that's the thing with playing all these games and taking them to replays and extra time, isn't it? Especially when you're down to a small squad, it's going to take it out of you.
Yeah. Just finally on this one, Tom, obviously with the new signings being ineligible to play, so obviously Matt Sells, Gio Reyna and Rodrigo Ribeiro, it meant that as well as Origi playing up front, we saw Matt Turner come in goal. Just be honest, how did he do? Did he restore some faith in his abilities?
He did all right. He made a couple of decent saves. There's been a criticism last night, and I've only seen one angle of it, which is the normal television broadcast, what you see, and I haven't seen the replays when they have a different angle. Some people were criticising should he have done better on the shot, what tipped on to the post, but I think that's just splitting hairs, really. Yeah, he did all right. He's still jittery when the ball's at his feet. He just treats it like a grenade kind of thing. But it was a decent save on the penalty. I mean, it was probably a relatively poor penalty from Bell.
Nice height for the keeper and all of that.
Yeah, and he did a bit tame effort, to be honest. So, but he could have easily gone the wrong way and missed it, not saving it kind of thing. So, yeah, I think it was an all right performance by Turner last night. It wasn't spectacular kind of thing, but we all know that Matt Sells will be in on Saturday against his former club. But I'm a bit surprised with Vlachodimos. I would have thought he would have played last night, and if he can't get ahead of Matt Turner in a cup game with Matt Sells there, is his Forest career up? And if it is, that's 9 million wasted on a keeper what's hardly played. And what we're going to do?
But either way, we've got 8 million that's been spent on either Sells or Turner or Vlachodimos that's been frittered away, because all three of them aren't going to hang around, in that way, are they? So,
no,
I agree with you in that sense. I'm going to repeat my theory, which is I think that Nuno actually likes Turner. He just wants him to get some confidence and thinks we'll see a different side. And I did see a quote of an interview I think Jamie posted it on Twitter that he put in a little excerpt where Turner said everything that could have gone wrong this season has done. Normally, as a keeper, you have one or two moments where things go against you, but everything that could have gone against me. So I feel like I've had some really bad luck. And Baz, as a keeper, you make your own luck, though, don't you?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's I saw that interview, and yeah, it was a good interview in that he's coming out fighting. He's not going to be like cowed by the situation that he's in, which is kind of what you want to see. And he's saying, like, yeah, as he said, oh, everything that could have gone against me has gone against me, but that's not going to stop me. He said he's not going to leave because he wants to play in the Premier League, and that's where he feels like he belongs. So it's good to see that he's got that spirit still in him. It hasn't been beaten out of him by the events of the last 6 months. But yeah, I can't see him. Assuming Sells is in any way better, which we certainly hope. You can't get 3 dodgy keepers in one season.
Can't we?
Well, you'd hope not. But yeah, I can't see him like getting back into the squad in the league in the short term, just because Sells has come in now. So yeah, definitely one of those two will have to leave. And it looks like it's Vlachodimos that's going.
And just very quickly with you, Baz, the other curio from last night, not curio, but something that I was very pleased to kind of hear about is that Sam Bell missed the penalty, young player, 21 years old, making his way in the Championship for Bristol City. Moussa Niakhaté obviously missed the penalty for Senegal that sent them out of AFCON, and Niakhaté, his initial instinct was obviously to celebrate. He congratulated his teammates, and then he went over and he spent a good amount of time talking to Bell, and Morgan Gibbs-White went over to him as well. And that's the kind of thing, I don't know, I'm idealistic, I'm a traditionalist, I was brought up to the Gospel of Clough, but that's the kind of thing I like to see, isn't it, for you, Baz?
Yeah, it's and it's the sort of thing that Steve Cooper would have gone on about the character of his players and things like that. And I'm sure we can touch on this in a bit with some of the other stories. But it's something I like to see, and I hope that we carry on in that way.
Yeah, Tom.
Yeah, it was very classy from Musa and Morgan, and Steve Cooper and Joe Worrall did it at the end of the playoff. Everybody was celebrating, and they consoled a couple of the Huddersfield players, and it is a class move. And Niakhaté, he was Mainz's captain, wasn't he, before he joined us, and he has got that leadership quality. I mean, when Turner made his mistake at Liverpool, he Musa was like coming up to the fans, even though the game was like just caught, like lay off him kind of thing. And I think he's a very affectionate person and shows a lot of empathy, which everybody makes mistakes. And I think Musa just likes to show that, and just goes to show he's a very good player, and he seems to be a very, very good team player and a character. And yeah, when you roll that into one, it does look very good for the club and the player.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
For the 23-24 season, 1865 is sponsored by Green King Sports, where football is more than a game. Their venues are showing every televised Forest fixture over the course of the season, so instead of turning to the internet for a dodgy stream, get your mates together and get down to your local Green King pub and get closer to the action. They've launched the Green King Sport Instagram page, which will be home to fan content, deals and competitions throughout the season. They've already given away Champions League final tickets and signed shirts, so you don't want to miss out. Drop them a follow and you won't just be the first to know about all of this, you'll be helping us here at 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. Welcome back to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast with me, Rich Ferraro, and to our Friday Five on Friday, the 9th of February. So we've already heard a couple of stories that Jamie had brought us in his news roundup. We've talked a little bit about the Bristol City match. We've talked about the squad announcement as well, a 25-man squad. And we've touched upon some of the injured players getting some minutes back in their legs. One of the players who did play, and there's still some doubts about, and we touched upon it ever so slightly, but Divock Origi, there's been talk that he's going to go to the MLS, but we haven't got many fit strikers, Baz. So, I mean, I'm kind of ambivalent. I just think the amount he's contributed in the Forest shirt means it doesn't make much difference to me if he stays or not, especially now we've got Reina and Ribeiro on board. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've not seen Ribeiro, and I don't know very much about him. I can remember hearing about Reina years and years ago, and so when I heard we were in for him, I was very excited about that. As for Origi, he's just I don't I the times I've seen him play, he hasn't shown anything that to really stand out. So yeah, I wouldn't. It's only the possibility of injuries to Taiwo, and obviously with Chris Wood being out, that's the thing to keep him rather than anything on his own merits for me.
Tom, that's an expensive squad player to have, isn't it?
It is, but thankfully he's only on loan, so he goes at the end of the season. And so, but no, he hasn't really done a lot. I mean, I know we all know he's been injured, and did he miss pre-season? He wasn't ready at the start of the season, and all that. I think he was like the second choice. I think the club actually wanted Michy Batshuayi, didn't they, on deadline day?
I'm not convinced that would have been amazingly better either.
No, but I think when you look at them both, it's like Michy Batshuayi, he seems to be more of a starter than Origi. Origi was like a bit part player at Liverpool, and he didn't really do anything at AC Milan, did he? And even Carragher mentioned on Stick to Football, he says Origi isn't that good of a footballer. And I think he has a spell where you think, oh, we could do something. Then you don't see him for long periods. And last night you didn't see much of him. It was a bit like a Rafik Jabor where the ball's basically just come off him and he's celebrated. He's got his goal and everything. But...
Oh, you and Rafik Jabor, just let it go, Tom. Baz, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Like, you're signing a player who's got a really questionable fitness record, who hasn't got that strong a record in the Premier League, and frankly looks a bit fat.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can kind of see why he had that reputation at Liverpool for coming off the bench and scoring important goals, and you could see that would be something that maybe Forest needed, but he hasn't really done that either. So, for whatever reason, so it's just like if the offer comes in, then yeah, I wouldn't be sad to see him go, and it's probably a good move for everyone involved.
And this neatly segues into the other sort of striker story that Jamie brought us. So Chris Wood is out with a damaged hamstring for 6 to 8 weeks. Now, funnily enough, obviously we're playing Newcastle on Saturday, and our Jamie was talking to the guys at Toon Under Pod, who we're hoping to hear from in our match report at the weekend. And we're just comparing notes about the fact that they've had Wilson and Isak alternating. When one's injured, the other gets fit, and vice versa. And Tom, that's how it feels with Wood and Taiwo, isn't it? Like, when one's available, the other's out, and therefore we always look thin on the ground.
Yeah, they're like passing ships in the night, aren't they? And yeah, and like I said earlier in this episode, if Awani gets injured, we're in the mire, aren't we, in terms of an attacking sense, because you can't rely on Origi with his he hasn't really been prolific, and then you obviously got the young lad, so yeah, you just got to wrap him up in cotton wool. And in hindsight, I wouldn't have played Awani last night, but there's nobody else, so probably he had to play kind of thing. So once Origi come off, so
on the other hand, you did mention Taiwo, could have done better with a chance. So maybe the minutes in his legs last night will help to contribute and getting that sharpness back, because it's always sharpness that's the problem for strikers, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's one of those, it's damned if you're not and damned if you are kind of thing regarding Awani. It's like you can see the reasons why you wouldn't have risked him last night, but then obviously you want to get him up to full match sharpness and get rid of the ring rust ready for this series of games, especially the 2 back-to-back home games against Newcastle and West Ham. If we do get maximum points out of them 2 games, yeah, I feel more hopeful than I am at the moment, because we played Bournemouth and it would have been, I know they're a bit of our bogey side, but we didn't really, even when they went down to 10 men, we didn't really threaten them, did we? And I just think with Luton doing quite well at the moment in terms of beat Brighton, should have possibly beaten Newcastle at St James's last week. It's kind of they're on a cusp of a wave at the moment, aren't they? And I think we just got to keep heads above water. But then this points deduction, which may or may not happen, we just need to be over that threshold of what we need. Because, like I says, if we lose 10 points and get dragged in, it's one of them, isn't it? So we just got to start winning our home games and get it back to being a fortress once again.
Baz, the very mention of a points deduction made a big, I don't know if that was a wry smile or a big cheesy grin. I'm not quite sure.
Well, it's I was thinking the other day, because of Luton's little run that they're on, I was thinking that I bet part of Forest's defence against the Chargers is we were a mid-table championship squad. We had no choice but to spend all that money to try and bring ourselves up to speed. And then you look over your shoulder at Luton, who were a mid-table championship squad and haven't really spent any money and are doing all right. So that kind of blows that out of the water, doesn't it?
Well, yes, it does. I was just, while you're talking, I was also just having a look at the fixture list. And the good news, Baz, is that it's another month before we play Brighton on the 10th of March. And bearing in mind that teams beginning with B, so we've had Blackpool, Bournemouth, Brentford and Bristol City recently. So who knows what's going to happen against Brighton. One player who won't be playing against Brighton is club skipper Joe Worrall, who has gone to, well, Besiktas. And it is a loan with an option to buy. Tom, I'm just going to throw it out there. Do you think he's ever going to pull on a red shirt for Forest again?
No. If the worst comes to worst and we do get relegated, I can see us probably using him again. But I don't know how long his actual contract is with Forest. If he's out of contract, but didn't he sign one?
I think he's until 2026. I think.
Yeah. So if we're a Premier League club, he will not play for us again. If we're a Championship, probably a 60% chance. But no, with Joe, I wish him all the best. It's just the last couple of months with personal issues and being dropped and this, that and the other, and then the rumours and what's actually kicked off, we will probably never know. And there's some fans out there who are giving him quite a bit of stick of how he's reacted to certain things. But we've got to remember that Joe has been with us since, 14, and he was the captain on the day that got us promoted. And I will never forget that moment as he stood at the council house in Slab Square, holding the trophy aloft. And I mean, he has had his limitations in the Premier League. One game is pretty decent, and then the next game it's a bit of a car crash, isn't it? So yeah, I wish him the best of luck, but I don't think we're going to see him in a Forest shirt again, unfortunately, for Joe.
What do you reckon, Baz? I mean, if as Tom says, if we do end up back in the Championship, then who knows? We could end up with a back line of defence, which is comprising of Rich Ferraro, Joe Worrall, and offering a new contract to Scott McKenna. Is it possible?
I can't see it. I mean, obviously, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but I'd imagine that he probably feels quite hurt by it all as well, given where he's from and everything. So whether he'd want to, even if the offer came in, might be a different thing. Obviously, it all depends on how things go for him in Turkey. But the thing that actually makes me quite sad about it is Steve Cooper always spoke about having that core of the players from Nottingham and how they understood the club and the traditions and all that sort of thing. But on top of that, Gary Brizzle always used to talk about how he used to work very hard to build up the character of the players. And with Gary Brizzle going and now Joe Worrall going, it's almost like the end of the Brazil era. Which and it leads us into an era of a bit of uncertainty, really, because we don't know quite what's going to come.
Okay, so just with that in mind then, Baz, what is it that maybe sets Yatesy apart as being the last man standing of the Forest Academy?
He's probably made fewer mistakes.
Oh.
Well, no, obviously Jono went for the money. I think Joe Worrall could do it in the Premier League, but it's taking him too long to sort of acclimatise.
Yeah, he's never found the consistency, has he? As Tom mentioned. I will point out that there was a thread on Twitter, and I'm assuming it was serious, but you can never quite tell. Someone I saw Ryan Yates's name pop up saying, "Yes, he's a defensive midfielder for Nottingham Forest. He frequently captains the team. He's got a great tackle rate, a great retention rate." And he could be a great fit. And you scroll back up the thread, it's looking for central defensive midfielders for Barcelona. I tell you what, if Yatesy scores, we're in the Med.
Just talk about Ryan Yates. You can't fault his attitude and professionalism and this, that, and the other. But I was getting a bit annoyed with him on Sunday. He never plays a forward pass, and it's very when he gets the ball, he always looks sideways or backwards kind of thing. And Graham Souness was on Talk Sport, and he says, how come no midfielders now are box to box? They're kind of hiding, when they're just slipping between the centre halves and everything, and nobody's putting any pressure on them. But back in his day, it's a bit box to box, and with Ryan Yates, I think he's going to be a decent squad player and nothing else. I just look at him and thinking, I just want a bit more from a midfielder, who starts quite a few games and carry the ball, and people are going to probably turn around and say, well, he did carry the ball against Man United, but nobody went near him for 70 yards. So I could do that if nobody's going to come near me. So, but
I'm not sure I could run 70 yards anymore. But anyway, I'm just
the other thing to think just on that is that it's if you think back to when we were in the Championship. And he started talking about how he was playing higher up the pitch and wanted to make those forward passes and stuff. And maybe it's this whole low block thing and the situation we found ourselves in has actually put him backwards as well.
Well, I was going to say, so there's a couple of potential counter arguments to what Tom mentioned. Number one is that you just look at the stats. When Yates plays, Forest are more likely to get good results. They win more matches and they lose fewer matches. So the points return when Yates is in the team is higher. Now, obviously, there's all kinds of mitigating circumstances around results, no matter which way they go, and you cannot pin them on one player, not even Matt Turner. And the other thing that I would just point out. Okay, Tom can pin it on Matt Turner. The other thing I'm just going to point out is that, down to changes of tactics and formations, as you said, Baz. So moving to a low block. We really enjoyed seeing the best of Yates. There's that spell, wasn't there, when Forest went to 4-3-3 last season, when it was Freuler with Kouyaté and Yates either side. And Kouyaté and Yates were playing as kind of genuine number 8s and being able to run up and down those channels. So Yates can do it. It's just that the team has to be set up in a way that, and I don't think we get the best out of him when we're playing the 4-2-3-1 because he is sitting deeper and doing those sideways passes. Tom, you're desperate to come back at me there, aren't you?
No, with the 4-3-3 with when Freuler and Kouyaté was in there, I can't really disagree with you on that one. Really, I think it's I just think you have to set the team up in a certain way to get maximum out of Ryan Yates, and you probably hit the nail on the head with this low block. It's probably stopped his development as he was doing that kind of thing. But I mean, I'm not going to go out of town and have a massive go about Ryan Yates. He does a job, and that's it. But sometimes I just want a midfielder who can bring us further up the field and everything, can be a bit box to box, and I just wish.
But we've still got Dominguez and Sangare, and the idea being, I think that they're going to be able to do that as well.
Whether they can do it, and hopefully that does happen when Sangare comes back in and Dominguez gets this bit of a rest now because he's played a lot of matches. So, but I won't go out of town having a go at Ryan Yates, but sometimes I just want a bit more from our central midfielder.
Well, that's very good of you, bearing in mind that you have done that about Matt Turner. So, having talked about the downs, let's just finish on a high. We want to wish the best to Ola Aina, Willy Bolly, Ibrahim Sangare, and latterly of Forest, Serge Aurier, because it's the AFCON final on Sunday and they're going to play there. The good news is it means that we'll get some of our squad back after that as well. And
we get one winner.
Well, I mean, that's true. We'll have someone who's going to have had the tournament of their life. So I'm going to say thank you very much to Tom Newton and to Baz, and also to you, listener, for joining us. Thank you also to Jamie for providing the news roundup. We will be back on Sunday or Monday with your Newcastle match report. Until then, thanks for listening, and come on, you Reds.
Sports Social Podcast Network.